Have you ever really stopped to think about what you're made of? I mean, not just flesh and bone, but what's at the absolute core of your being? Well, today, we're going to dive deep on an incredible journey inside the blueprint of life itself. We're going to explore the most fundamental building block of every living thing on this planet, the cell.
Yeah, let's just put the question right out there. If you could zoom way, way in, past your skin, through your muscles, past your bones, all the way down to the microscopic level, what would you find? What are you really made of?
Well, the answer, believe it or not, is the cell. It is the absolute smallest thing that can be considered alive. And we're not talking about just a few. You are made of trillions of these tiny, bustling little cities, all working together in perfect harmony to make you, you.
So how on earth did we figure all this out? You know, it wasn't some single aha moment. It was this slow, incredible realization, built over centuries, that led to one of the most important ideas in all of biology, a kind of universal rulebook for life called the cell theory. And the crazy thing is, it's actually super simple when you break it down. It just has 3 core rules. Okay, rule 1, if it's alive, it's made of cells. Simple as that. Rule 2, the cell is the most basic unit of that life. You can't get any smaller. And number 3, and this one was a real game changer, cells don't just pop out of nowhere. Every single cell has to come from another cell that already existed.
And like I said, this didn't just happen overnight. It was like a huge scientific mystery that took centuries to solve. You've got Robert Hooke back in 1665, just looking at a piece of cork under a microscope and seeing these little boxes he calls cells. Then came all these other brilliant scientists, each adding a crucial piece to the puzzle, until Rudolf Virchow finally put it all together with that profound idea: all cells come from other cells.
Okay, so get this. For all the wild diversity of life on this planet, I mean, from a single bacterium to a massive whale, it all boils down to just 2 basic designs, 2 fundamental blueprints for a cell. We call them prokaryotic and eukaryotic.
The easiest way to wrap your head around it is to think of it like this. A prokaryotic cell is like a super simple, efficient, one-room workshop. Everything it needs is just kind of floating around in one space. But a eukaryotic cell, that's the kind we're made of. It's more like a massive, sprawling, high-tech factory, with all these different departments, each with a very specific job.
And you can see that difference so clearly right here. Over on the left, that's the prokaryote. See how simple it is? Its DNA is kind of just floating around in there. But then look at the eukaryote on the right. It's just jam-packed with all these little compartments and structures. And it's that incredible organization that allows for bigger, more complex life forms like us.
All right, so let's put on our microscopic hard hats and take a tour inside that amazing eukaryotic factory. We're going to check out some of the most important departments, or as scientists call them, the organelles.
First up, we're headed straight to the corner office, the command center, the nucleus. This is the big boss. It holds all the DNA, the master blueprint with all the instructions for everything the cell will ever need to do.
Okay, next stop, the power plant. This is the mitochondria, and these things are absolutely essential. They take the fuel from the food you eat and they turn it into a molecule called ATP. Think of ATP as the cash that powers everything in the factory. Literally everything. No ATP, no work gets done. The lights go out.
Okay, so you've got the blueprints from the nucleus, and you've got all this energy from the mitochondria. What's next? Well, you got to start building stuff. And that's the job of the ribosomes. They're the tiny workers on the assembly line reading the DNA's instructions and building all the different proteins the cell needs to survive and do its job.
All right, once our proteins are built, you can't just leave them sitting on the factory floor, right? They need to get to where they're going, and that is the job of the Golgi apparatus. This is the cell's post office or shipping department. It takes the newly built proteins, modifies them, sorts them, and packages them up to be sent out. And this is where you see the whole production line come together. It's just beautiful. Instructions come from the nucleus, they go to the ribosomes for assembly, and then the finished product heads over to the Golgi for sorting and shipping. It's an incredibly smooth, coordinated process that's happening trillions of times over in your body right this second. Okay, so we've zoomed way in to see how one single cell is like its own little factory. But how do we get from that to, well, us? A complex, living, breathing person. Let's zoom back out and see how these cells team up to build an entire living empire. It all comes down to teamwork, really. It's a hierarchy. You start with the individual cells, right? The basic bricks. They group together with other similar cells to form tissues. Then, different kinds of tissues work together to build an organ, like your heart or your lungs. And finally, those organs team up to create entire organ systems that perform huge, complex jobs.
And this is a fantastic example of what that scaling up looks like in real life. You start with single microscopic lung cells. They combine to make lung tissue. That tissue builds the organ, the lung itself. And the lungs are a key part of your entire respiratory system. That's how you get from something you can't even see to the system that's letting you breathe right this second.
And this all comes full circle, right back to that powerful idea from Rudolf Virchow. Omnis cellula a cellula. All cells come from cells. That one little phrase, it captures this incredible, unbroken chain of life stretching back through your parents, your grandparents, all the way back for billions of years from the very first cell to you sitting here right now.
Okay, but before we wrap up, I have to leave you with one last idea that is just, well, it's mind-bending. It's called the endosymbiotic theory. It proposes that some of the most important parts of our own cells, like those powerhouse mitochondria, weren't always ours. They were actually their own separate, free-living bacteria that billions of years ago got swallowed up by a bigger cell, but instead of being digested, they just stayed.
So, let me leave you with this question. What if you, right now, aren't just one single organism, but a walking, talking community, an ancient team, a collaboration of trillions of cells that contain the descendants of bacteria that decided to work together, all operating in perfect harmony to create you? Kinda changes how you see yourself, doesn't it?
Subscribe to my channel.